Hi. Over the period of March, we're near the end, I have accumulated quite a few books, some of which I have finished, some of which I have half read, some of which I have yet to start. So I thought I'd give you a quick roundup um, and, where relevant, some quick thoughts on each book. I want to start with Yevgeny Onegin by Pushkin. Um, Apparently, this is the first edition in English that uses the more Russian Yevgeny rather than the anglicised or, in fact, Americanized, apparently, Eugene Onegin. For those who don't know, this is called a novel in prose. It was first written in Russian in the early part of the 19th century and is the seminal work in Russian literature equivalent to Shakespeare in English, Dante in Italian, and Don Quixote in Spanish. It is responsible for modern Russian, as those writers often are in their native languages. There is something intrinsically problematic in translating a very long poem, or especially a poem that rhymed. And this is the second translation I've read of Onegin. Um, and I've read a lot of Russian literature, and in the end, it's one of those things. If you want to read Onegin, you have to learn Russian. It's the same as you really want to read Dante's Divine Comedy. You have to learn Italian. But there's a very good essay at the beginning on how difficult it is to translate it. The problem, of course, is essentially one has to. There's so many sort of linguistic acrobatics that need to be done in order to render something that is faithful to the text and to the form. And whilst I find it quite compelling, and it is clearly one of the standout translations, I still am always sitting outside the text because of the ingenuity it has taken to make it work. It's published by Pushkin Press, so this is obviously clearly the key text. They're a great publisher. They do a lot of Stefan Zweig, which I've read. I haven't read this, but it won the Bailey Gifford Prize, East West Street by Philip Sand. It's published by Weidenfeld Nicholson. It won the Bailey Gifford Prize against Secondhand Time by Svetlana Alexievich, which is one of my all-time favourite books from not only from last year in my entire life. She won the Nobel last year. This is a book written by an international lawyer, and it's essentially a sort of legal exploration of what it means, what crimes of humanity means, and by extension human rights, and it's essentially about the Nuremberg trials and about the Holocaust. But it has uniformly brilliant reviews. So I look forward to that. Paterson, William Carlos Williams. This is like Yevgeny Onegin. This is a long poem, 5 volumes, about the city of Paterson, but really it's actually about William Carlos Williams. He is a contemporary of my favourite poet of all time, Wallace Stevens, and I was at a bookshop and I just saw it and bought it. But I can't tell you anything about it because I haven't read it. Okay, then we have Augustine, Conversions and Confessions by Robin Lane Fox, who is a Oxford scholar. For those who don't know, Augustine really defines Western Christendom or Western Christianity. It really kind of goes, St. Paul, Augustine, Aquinas, and then there's a huge leap into the early 20th century. I've never liked him as a figure. I feel that he turned Christianity into the narrowest and most constricted and overly intellectual system of ideas, if you will. But he was a fantastic point. It's 3,300 years AD. What's interesting about him is that he's supposed to be responsible for the first ever kind of confessional manuscript, i.e. the Confessions, which this is largely about, and also apparently he invented reading to oneself, i.e. before Augustine, everyone essentially read out loud. But the great quote, where is this? Yes, great quote of Augustine, which I think contextualizes him or puts him in perspective, is give me chastity, but not yet. Now, Augustine did a lot of fucking in his early life, and then when he had his huge conversion experience, he basically decided none of us should. And that's why I dislike him. It's almost like, as a convert, he went from one extreme to the other, and decided that his conversion experience was somehow the one we should all follow. Whereas all around him there were pagans who were living a different lifestyle. So, obviously it's much richer than that. I'm only about a quarter through it. I'm having a slight problem with the text. I'm not sure Robin Lane Fox knows what his story is here, and I think a slightly more focused analysis of Augustine and his thinking would be slightly more engaging. But this feels as though he's trying to get in too much about the contemporary scene, two other contemporaneous thinkers, one Greek, one pagan, and I don't know, but it's an extraordinary work of scholarship, but not as extraordinary in terms of scholarship as Russian Revolution, an Empire in Crisis, 1890 to 1928 by S.A. Smith, published by Oxford. Let's not forget that this is the centenary of the October Revolution. Well, it will be in a few months' time. This is an extraordinary work of scholarship. The level of detail is both impressive, commanding, and somewhat forbidding. And really, it's not. I don't feel it's for the. He says it's for the general reader. I don't think. I mean, I know a little bit about that period, but I don't really need to know, every tonnage of corn or wheat or vodka or the number of people who striked, when they striked, everything. It is commendable in its scholarly rigor, but it rather takes away from what obviously is a hugely compelling story. Next, Kid Glove by Adam Mars Jones, A Voyage Around My Father. This is a memoir by a very accomplished and elegant writer, reviewer, novelist. I read, as with the Pushkin, I read about this in Nicholas Lazard's column in The Guardian in his book of the week. Essentially, Adam Mars Jones is gay, and his father, who was a eminent QC and judge in the British judiciary, was one of the most rabid homophobes. And so it's a kind of memoir that reconciles, diametrically opposed sons and fathers. The difference, my problems with my own father are not the same, but the diametrically opposed bit is. Now I'm just over halfway through Keir Cawthorne's The Castle Cross and the Magna Carta. It's a very long book, and it is an extraordinary book. It is not without its faults, but it couldn't be the book it is, I think, and not have the problems it has. So let's just park the problems, of which they are few and minimal, and really, we can just park them. What it is an extraordinary novel of childhood. So the first third is written in the interior and exterior monologues of children, unmediated by contextualizing prose. So the kind of stream of consciousness, they're either talking to themselves or they're talking out loud. And that's in the early 1940s. And then it goes into the civil rights movement in the 1960s, which is where I am at the moment. But I think what's so profound, but why it is one of the most profound novels about childhood, is that I think what it's trying to do, or at least what I think it's doing and doing very successfully, is essentially it's saying that unless something tragic happens, our childhoods, our childhoods are not really affected by the big vicissitudes of life. That they are in fact kind of local and similar, but they cannot be protected from the wider social narrative. So these are, there's two white brothers and two African American brothers in the 1940s, and of course their childhood is exactly the same as my childhood in South London in the 1960s and early 70s, because there is something generic about childhood. You're often outside, you often have a small set of friends, there are kind of little internecine battles between sort of, rival groups of friends. Difference plays a part, but not a big part. But essentially, we are just being children, and then kind of life begins. And really, what this does is this novel recognises that there is a cut-off point, and that below that cut-off point, you're actually living a kind of, you're living a childhood, recognisable to us all, and then who we are, what our social narrative is, has the impact, and we have to manage that with who we are. But actually, I'm not entirely sure that our childhood has a great deal to do with it, even the defining moments. But it's really extraordinary, and not like any other book that I've read in 40 years. We're getting close to the end. Compass, Matthias Enard, Fitzcarraldo editions. If people who watch this vlog, or whatever this is called, will know that Matthias Enard wrote Zone, which I believe is the most serious work of fiction ever written. Apparently, this is better. It won the Prix de Goncourt in France, which is the highest literary prize in France. And people who have read it, who love Zone, not as much as I did, but really loved it, do say this is better. That's some ask. I know nothing about this. The Lonely City by Olivia Lang. I was literally at the bookstore and I was paying, and some guy said, you should read this. Adventures in the Art of Being Alone in New York City. And really, I haven't, that's all I can say. I bought it because I think booksellers should sell the books that they love. And then finally, George Sanders' Lincoln in the Bardo. I haven't read anything by George Sanders before, but his name is familiar to me. The moment I saw one review that said it's formally inventive and sort of mesmeric and a once-in-a-generation novel, I bought it, and it's probably next on my list. That's it. Quite a few. Yes. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.